Donald Trump cracks down on illegal immigrants. Somalis in Mexico, they dream of reaching Canada but increasingly fear the U.S.
Especially someone like me who is a Muslim, at the same time black.
And the insiders are here tonight. The topic, very current. When does spin become a lie? And when it does, who should call it out? Jamie, Kathleen, and David with their thoughts. Whether it's U.S. politics or something else, more asylum seekers are crossing into Canada illegally these days. And tonight, the government is under pressure to do something about it. The refugees are sneaking in to get around what's called the Safe Third Country Agreement. If they were to arrive from the U.S. at an official border crossing, they'd be turned back because Canada considers the United States safe. Something the government's being urged to reconsider. Katie Simpson has more.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
The attacks came from all sides as the government faced repeated demands to change course on its refugee policy. But the calls on what to do next couldn't be more different.
And while the Liberals sound welcoming, they have implemented absolutely zero measures to address this situation.
The NDP wants the Liberals to suspend the Safe Third Country Agreement with the U.S., which the Prime Minister soundly rejected today.
The Canadians have confidence in the integrity of our borders and the integrity of our immigration system.
The Conservatives are making broad calls to crack down on illegal border crossings.
People running across farmers' fields illegally cannot continue.
But when pressed for specifics, public safety critic Tony Clement was short on details and patience while speaking with a CBC radio morning show in Montreal.
We have a problem. It's simple. Apply the law.
Well, how would they apply the law? So would they stop them? Would they say, "I'm sorry, you can't cross here and you should go back across the border"? How would
Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale defended the status quo, saying the situation is being monitored by police and border agents.
Should they recommend changes or adjustments or additions to what they have on the ground now, obviously the government would be anxious to have their advice.
The political pressure comes as scenes just like this continue to play out across small border communities in Quebec and Manitoba. Asylum seekers making the treacherous journey in the hopes of having their refugee case heard by Canadian officials instead of navigating the evolving American immigration system. While the number of illegal crossings is up compared to this time last year, the immigration minister downplayed the concern.
If you take a broader view and you look at different years, you'll see a fluctuation, increases some years, decreases other years.
But for the union representing officers with the Canadian Border Service Agency who process these claims, the fluctuating numbers are being noticed by agents on the front lines.
They're getting tired right now. They've been doing a lot of overtime, and the situation doesn't seem that it will get better in the near future.
Some of Canada's premiers are also concerned the situation may not be getting better. Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister is sending a letter to the Prime Minister to raise issues he thinks could be worked on together between the provinces and Ottawa. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Ottawa.
The immigration minister was also talking today about bringing in more refugees legally, specifically those fleeing ISIS, 400 by tomorrow, 1,200 by year's end. And while Canada, as a rule, does not offer protection based on religion or ethnicity, the minister says the majority will be Yazidis from northern Iraq. David Cochran explains why.
He personally arrived in Canada as a refugee from Somalia, and today the immigration minister opened the country's doors to the victims of ISIS.
Yazidi people constitute a vast majority of the people that will be resettled as a result of this initiative because of the particularly high level of violence that they have suffered.
High level of violence almost seems like an understatement for what has been called a genocide. The Yazidis are a Kurdish religious minority that ISIS has branded as devil worshippers. Thousands have been killed, women and girls captured, many bought and sold as sex slaves.
The reality is that if the international community doesn't wake up to the plight of these people, they will be wiped off the face of the earth and the genocide will be complete. And
Conservative MP Michelle Rempel has been pushing Ottawa to act since last year.
Against, contre, 0, nil.
4 months ago, the House of Commons unanimously supported her motion urging Canada to help. It passed as Nadia Murad, a Yazidi woman kidnapped and raped when she was 19, watched from the public gallery. But then, silence until today.
Our operation aims to bring to Canada those at the greatest risk and to give them the support and services that they need to make a new home and to restart their lives here.
It's the second time the Trudeau government has taken direct action on a specific group of refugees. But unlike the made-for-TV moments that welcomed the Syrians, the Yazidi arrival will be confidential, a step to avoid re-victimizing the refugees or identifying their family members back home for reprisal. It's also why the government has essentially said nothing since endorsing Rempel's motion.
I don't hesitate to say that these people are probably the most vulnerable and the most persecuted group of people in the world right now.
The 1,200 government-sponsored refugees is just a start, as Ottawa is also working to facilitate the private sponsorship of Yazidi refugees into the country, meaning ordinary Canadians and community groups can help finance a safe haven for even more victims of ISIS. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
During the U.S. presidential campaign, Donald Trump talked not only about a wall, but a deportation force to remove millions living in the U.S. illegally. Today, talk is a step closer to reality. The Trump administration announced new guidelines on deportations, tasking enforcement agents to cast a wider net and cast more people out. Paul Hunter has the story.
Yes, along parts of the U.S.-Mexican border, there's already a wall, but until Donald Trump, as he's pledged, has it stretch across the entire border, his approach, as of right now, is that it's time to toughen up on illegal immigrants already in the U.S. This is security cam video of people crossing into Arizona.
The message from this White House is that those people who are in this country and pose a threat to our public safety or have committed a crime will be the first to go, and we will be aggressively making sure that that occurs.
Today, a kind of how-to guide on that in the form of 2 memos from the Department of Homeland Security, including directives to start hiring many thousands of additional Border Patrol and immigration enforcement agents, to begin planning the design, construction, and maintenance of a wall, and that as of right now, criminal aliens are a priority for removal. That last part now includes anyone here illegally who's also been convicted, charged, or even suspected of any criminal offense, even a minor crime. Hundreds of thousands could now be deported without a hearing. Under Barack Obama, only those convicted of serious crimes were targeted that way. Bottom line, as Trump himself put it so often last year on the campaign trail,
They have to come in legally. They have to come in legally.
No wall! No ban! No wall! His pledge to act has brought angry demonstrations throughout the U.S. Advocacy groups today called the new guidelines breathtaking and un-American. But Trump, who today toured the new Museum of African American History in Washington, knows that many millions of Americans support him on this.
This is about love. This building is about love. And we have to have people come in that are going to love the country, not people that are going to harm the country.
The U.S. Congress needs to approve some of today's changes, but the bottom line is all but certain. The number of deportations from this country is set to grow tremendously, just as Donald Trump promised. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Well, to date, the president who oversaw the largest peacetime expulsion of people from the U.S. was Barack Obama. From 2008 to 2016, the U.S. deported more than 3 million people. About half of them were convicted criminals, a priority for the Obama administration. Though critics will point out even his record pace had begun to slow by 2015. Trump also made news today by denouncing anti-Semitism, saying it is, quote, horrible, it's going to stop, and it has to stop. The statement comes after a weekend that saw a Jewish cemetery defaced in Missouri and 11 Jewish community centers across the U.S. targeted with bomb threats. Trump had been criticized recently for not condemning threats against Jews. Another tragic reminder today of the risks African migrants are taking to escape war and poverty. The bodies of at least 74 people have been found on the coast of Libya, as well as a motorless, torn rubber boat. It's just the latest tragedy on the Libya-Italy smuggling route. At least 228 people drowned in January alone, the deadliest month by far in recent years for migrants trying to reach Europe. But more than 600 other migrants did make it to Europe today. They were rescued by the Italian Coast Guard early this morning from two boats found adrift in the Mediterranean. Coming up, our insiders look at the state of truth in politics. Is a broken promise the same as a lie? Plus, Somali asylum seekers stuck in Mexico. They hear Justin Trudeau's message loud and clear.
I frequently follow him on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube.
The accused shooter in the Quebec City mosque attack made a brief court appearance today. 27-year-old Alexandre Bissonnette is charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder and 5 counts of attempted murder using a restricted firearm.
Nous avons confiance en la justice canadienne et québécoise.
We have confidence in the justice system, a mosque leader said at the court. He also said the mosque is hiring its own lawyers to observe the trial, which resumes March 30th. 13 members of the Calgary Police Service are filing complaints of bullying and harassment just a few weeks after one of them, a longtime officer, offered an emotional resignation at a public meeting. She says the culture needs to change in the police and the military, and the time is now. Carolyn Dunn has more.
I have been bullied, sexually harassed, degraded, and chastised. I did not leave the Calgary Police Service. The Calgary Police Service left me.
It was a tearful public declaration that set off an avalanche of complaints against the Calgary Police Service. Jen Magnus, a 14-year veteran police officer, had simply had enough. Now, a dozen of her colleagues, men and women, have joined her. They'll be filing complaints to the police chief ranging from discrimination to physical abuse. Magnus says that is stirring mixed emotions.
You feel support that there are other people out there, but at the same time you're disgusted that other people are suffering like you.
The complaints are laying bare a dysfunction in Calgary policing that has bubbled under the surface, mostly unreported to the public. A glimpse of it came to light last fall when Post Media obtained a 2013 workplace review of the Calgary Police Service that found an old boys network. Some of the women interviewed reported over their career they had 1,000 stab wounds from workplace interactions, and their acceptance on the job ended at the point they became pregnant. Other allegations ranged from sexual harassment to bullying and a fear of retaliation for anyone who blows the whistle. This workplace expert says the dynamics of a paramilitary organization are different than other workplaces.
Many of them wouldn't actually see it as harassing or bullying, but they would see it as testing to make sure that you've got the right kind of stuff so that you're a person I know that I can trust. In order to maintain workplace health, the service is going to have to change its culture.
Calgary Police Chief Roger Chaffin says he's committed to an external investigation of the complaints, and not just the current ones.
We'd rather see them come forward, and I would still take the opportunity to tell anybody in the organization to come forward if they have these concerns.
Chaffin hasn't accepted Jen Magnus's resignation, which means technically she's still a member of the force.
It's still raw and it still hurts.
And she's still trying to recover and get her life on track. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Calgary.
British Columbia's Liberal government unveiled its provincial budget today, and it was full of pre-election treats. BC Finance Minister Mike de Young's 2017-2018 budget eliminates unpopular medical service premiums, starting with a 50% cut next year. It also cuts the small business income tax rate and boosts spending to education and child welfare, all while maintaining a surplus of almost $300 million. A provincial election is coming up in BC on May 9th. The modern family has made legal history in Canada once again. Two Ottawa women who are not in a romantic relationship were recently granted equal rights and responsibilities to co-parent a 7-year-old boy. As part of our Next Canada series on the changing face of the country, the CBC's Julie Ayrton tells us their story.
Law professor Linda Collins lives alone in this downtown Ottawa condo building. And in the apartment downstairs lives the rest of her unique family. Her best friend, Natasha Bacht, is also a law professor at the University of Ottawa. And little Elan. Bacht gave birth to him 7 years ago with the help of a sperm donor. It all started out when Collins was Bacht's birth coach.
Linda and I are in a non-conjugal relationship, which just means that we're very good friends.
Elan was born with profound disabilities, and after sharing in his daily care for years, the two women decided to raise him together. They recently started the process to formalize the relationship and officially make Collins a mom.
Formalizing it for me was mainly emotional, mainly just to be able to say, yep, this is my son, I'm his mother.
But because they're not a couple in the romantic sense, Collins could not adopt Elan. Instead, they made a legal case for something called a declaration of parentage.
Natasha and I are lawyers, and we're in particular public interest lawyers, and we believe in the potential of law to make a difference and to get things right.
Late last year, a judge agreed. The new birth certificate arrived in January.
An L makes the sound.
Collins is officially Elan's co-mom and can make important decisions for him. She'll also share the family's financial responsibilities.
I know that Linda is there to take care of Elan should anything happen to me.
Chose him to be my...
But their legal victory won't necessarily help others. A new law came into effect in Ontario in January. Under that law, it must be decided before conception who a child's parents will be. This lawyer says the law likely did not contemplate their situation.
This situation is one that was very, very unique from what I was able to see in the case law and in history.
There is still room for these two women to have romantic partners, so that means this family could expand. If the partnership were to dissolve, there would be a custody agreement, just like in any family breakup. Julie Ayrton, CBC News, Ottawa.
People in Zimbabwe are marking an important milestone for their longtime president, whether they like it or not. It's Robert Mugabe's 93rd birthday. He's the world's oldest head of state and one of the most notorious. A dictator, critics say, who's ruined a once prosperous nation. Margaret Evans reports from Harare.
Daily life in Harare. Nicknamed Pothole City by its fatigued residents. You pay your taxes, they say, but the roads don't get any better. Zimbabwe remains mired in economic meltdown, a conveyor belt of people trying to make ends meet or make do. The country is full of university graduates with nowhere to go but out of the country if they want a job. Formal unemployment here at 90%.
A lot of people are tired. Even people from Mugabe's political party, they're tired, but no one can really say it because we're all scared.
Mugabe has ruled Zimbabwe with brutal force for close to 4 decades now. The former liberation hero is 93 today, and his ruling ZANU-PF party is planning celebrations for the weekend. Last year's party cost a reported $800,000.
You know, President Mugabe has given us dignity, we as Zimbabweans, we as black people.
But there are signs Mugabe's hold on power is starting to crack, partly down to a cash crisis that has seen the government introduce bond notes. Street protests are on the rise despite police repression. Activist Promise Mukwananzi says Zimbabwe is so bankrupt it's pinching Mugabe's own pockets.
His capacity to sustain his patronage is severely weakened now. There's no money in the country. He's given out all the land he could give.
Mugabe allowed militant war veterans to seize commercial white-owned farms in 2000, handing out land to political cronies instead of ordinary Zimbabweans. But today, even the war veterans, including former Ambassador Agrippa Mutambara, have abandoned him.
Now, after independence, he forgets that we are the same people who propelled him into power.
But Mugabe insists he'll run again next year, that there is no other candidate for president that his people would prefer. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Harare.
Drought-stricken for years, California is dealing with its worst flooding in years as the last of a major storm system passes through the region. Like a chain of tiny islands, the roofs of cars poked out from the water in this San Jose neighborhood. Fire crews rescued residents. Farm animals in the area were not so lucky. The rain will subside by tomorrow, giving the state some well-needed relief. Straight ahead, the latest from the insiders. Is there a place in politics for lying? Hi there, Peter Mansbridge again. As you know, we're in a commercial break right now, so this isn't live, what I'm doing right now, but it is an opportunity to talk to you because we want to use these commercial breaks for a different reason in the days ahead. We want to be able to talk to you, answer some of your questions. We've had a number already have been coming in ever since we were putting the National on Facebook, and one of the constants has always been, what's my office look like? Now, I don't know why you really wanted to know that, but I'll give you an opportunity. This is it. It's kind of in transition now as I get ready to move on to other things later this year. But this is the National Host's office. It's great. It's an opportunity to keep some of the things you build up over the years. This is one of my favorites here, this picture. It was given to me after 25 years of the National. Why is it one of my favorites? Because you can look at it and actually watch me grow old. That's what I said to them when I gave it to them. I said, gee, thanks a lot. It's really nice to see how quickly I grew old in that picture. But anyway, it's a nice memento, the different backgrounds, the different looks of the National over the years, but the constant has always been what we're most proud of, and that's the integrity of the broadcast itself and the journalists who work on it. All of them, both those you see on camera and those who you don't see, who work behind the camera, whether it's the camera operators, the director in the control room, all those people who put together the show every night, the writers, editors, etc. So anyway, this is a little glimpse of my office. It's a good size because we have meetings in here throughout the day, and the major lineup meeting of the evening happens in this room as well, where the senior editors get together. We discuss the order of the program that you're watching right now, what makes it onto the show, what doesn't make it onto the show. Anyway, we'll have the opportunity to take your questions live during the program, and it'll start in the next break coming up on the National. So I'll be in the studio all properly dressed with my tie on and everything at that point. But we hope you're enjoying this opportunity to do the National on Facebook, and also the opportunity for you to get your questions in. So don't be shy, send them along. We'll try to answer as many as we can. It's time to get back to work. Talk to you soon.
You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden. Who would believe this? Sweden.
Well, actually, nothing bad happened in Sweden that night. So was Donald Trump lying, confused, or spinning? There have been a few moments like that in Trump's first, at times chaotic month on the job. His supporters say he's delivering on his promises. His critics say he uses conspiracy theories and bends the facts to suit his needs. When does spin become a lie? And is Trump's technique on the facts really all that different from what we've witnessed for years? The insiders are here on that. Strategist Jamie Watt, Kathleen Monk, and David Hurley, all here tonight. Before you say anything, I want to show you a couple of more of these sort of fact-stretching moments. Watch this.
Isn't it amazing the way they say there's no voter fraud? Folks, it's a rigged system, and it's a rigged election, believe me.
It looked, honestly, it looked like 1.5 million people, whatever it was, but it went all the way back to the Washington Monument. You've seen what happened in Paris and Nice. All over Europe, it's happening. It's gotten to a point where it's not even being reported.
All right. Don't want to sound like we're picking on Donald Trump, because we could run a number of politicians. These are just sort of the most recent. But let's start with, in general terms, how in politics do you define a lie?
A lie is something that's not true. And I think this discussion we've been having...
there'd be a lot of lies in politics.
No, I think there's the discussion we've been having about these alt facts. I don't think an alt fact exists. I think an alt fact is a bold-faced lie. End of discussion. I think what we talk about sometimes in politics, when politicians say one thing and do another, break a promise, that can be different. And that can come from generally from two places. One, from a place of sort of funny business where they decided they weren't going to keep their promise all along, bad. Or it can come from changing circumstances. When they get in to power, they see things differently than they saw them on the campaign trail. And they aren't always able to keep their promise. And I think we have to have some flexibility on that.
How do you define it, Kathleen?
Well, I think a lie in politics is the same kind of thing you teach your children. You know, it's a statement that is untrue, like Jamie said, but there has to be that kind of intent to deceive. And that's really what defines a lie. And I think that, though, it's very unhelpful when people tend to conflate spin and lying because, frankly, in some ways it's unhelpful because persuasive argument and argumentation that a lot of us do, interpret the facts to make our arguments, might be a spin, but it's not a lie. And as a political practitioner, you can take it to a certain level, make a persuasive argument, and fight around the lunch table or you know, in Parliament, and that's not lying. And when we conflate those two issues, spinning and lying, I think it'd be challenging, and it actually kind of breeds the cynicism that kind of erodes democracy overall.
I wonder whether that translates to, you know, to the ordinary general public. I get it in terms of, you know, people like you who work in the back rooms make that distinction, but I wonder at times whether everybody does. David, where are you on this?
Well, I think that that's a really important point because I think as practitioners and people who've worked in the business and worked with politicians of good faith, we know how things that you promise in an election campaign, for example, can be wrong because of excessive optimism or because of facts you didn't know rather than intent to deceive at the time. I don't think Obama was lying when he said he would close Guantanamo Bay. I think he found out things after he was elected that told him he couldn't close Guantanamo Bay. But I think for a lot of
electoral reform?
For a lot of people, this is a distinction without a difference. I mean, my surveys tell me that 50% of Canadians think politicians lie regularly, and the rest of them think they lie some of the time. So that's an important base on which to understand how people will react to Trump. The fact that people are calling him a liar is not necessarily going to damage him with the citizens because people think all politicians lie. I think you have to get at the different nature and character of Trump's lies in order to really damage him.
Okay, on the electoral reform though, is that just, do the three of you see that as just a broken promise versus a lie?
Yeah, I think it's a broken promise, and I think the Prime Minister is going to pay for his broken promise, as politicians do. One of the problems we have in the system that we currently use, Peter, is that you're out until you're in. And Stephen Lewis famously said, whereas I haven't got it quite right, but that he learned more in the first 30 days of transition to the Ray government than he had in 30 years in public life, because until you get in, until you sit behind that desk, you actually don't know what the facts are. And in some ways, our hyper-partisan approach to governing doesn't actually get us the best promises on the campaign trail because people making them actually don't know any better.
Go ahead.
We've seen recent examples in Canadian politics. You know, the Conservative Party leadership candidates. There's been two that have come out, Andrew Scheer and Stephen Blaney, who basically said in a fundraising email recently that Justin Trudeau wants to legalize heroin. Now, that is just not true. And I would argue that that's a lie, and it's not a spin or a different interpretation of the facts. That's untrue, and it can be proven as untrue. But I mean, certainly Trump nor these Conservative leadership candidates aren't the first people to lie in politics, right? Like, I think probably in our experience, one of the largest lies that took place was the weapons of mass destruction that took place around the Iraq War. And we all saw Colin Powell go to the UN and make this case, and we saw the photos. And that was really Karl Rove.
Now, was he lying, Colin Powell, or was he going with the facts that have been, or alleged facts that have been given to him?
So I would have drawn the line back, the dotted line back to Karl Rove, who you know may or may not have orchestrated the leak from the Pentagon that White House journalists then questioned the White House about. Then yes, we've had reports of weapons of mass destruction. So then you get the double sourcing going on. So was it orchestrated? Lots of the writing around it say yes, right? But whether it was Colin Powell, I don't know.
I want to get to this question of alternative facts, which is what Jamie brought up. And it all arose out of the interview on Meet the Press, the NBC program, with the host Chuck Todd and Kellyanne Conway, who is one of Trump's communications experts, although I haven't seen her around the last little while. I don't know what happened. But watch this exchange from about 2 weeks ago.
Why did he do that? It undermines the credibility of the entire White House press office on day one.
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute. Alternative facts?
Is there such a thing as alternative facts?
Well, I think that actually I would say that I can imagine a scenario in which there are. Because we shouldn't underestimate the fact that media has always played an interpretive role and brings its own narrative to the way it covers things. We all know, from those of us who've been involved in campaigns, that when your campaign's going badly, you tend to get worse photographs on TV or in the newspapers than you do when your campaign is going well. I reminded of the incident of Robert Stanfield dropping the football in 1968. Well, I'm told he caught every other ball that was thrown to him, but the one picture of him dropping it was the one picture every Canadian saw. So a conservative being interviewed at that point could have said, well, an alternative fact is that he caught 9 out of 10 footballs that were thrown to him. But that's not the way Kellyanne Conway, Sean Spicer, and the Trump people are using it. They're not presenting a different picture of the same thing. They're attacking truth itself. They are attacking the very notion that there can be truth. And they're saying that what Donald Trump believes, backed up by his victory in the election, is every bit as valid as the objectively known truth. And that is fundamentally different than what we've seen.
And they're getting away with it because we've had a structural change. Because until recently, we all got our news from the same source. And then we decided what we would do with that news individually. Now people are getting their news from echo chambers where all they're doing is pinging off each other and their own point of view, and they're working each other up to convince each other of a certain set of facts. And there's no fact check. So what's happened is public decided that it's time to throw out the elites, but with that, we threw out the people that actually knew some things about some of these topics. We threw out the fact checkers. We threw out the people to hold people's feet to the fire. And now anyone can say anything, including that we've got terrorism problems in Sweden, which is demonstrably not true.
And it's a challenge for media, because how do you maintain this neutrality? I mean, your network wrestles with this. We've seen CNN and NBC wrestle with this. How do you maintain that neutrality, but actually challenge those lies when you hear them? So you're trying to have this balance, present two sides of the story, but there are lies. And so we've seen these anchors like Don Lemon just shut down whole interviews recently.
You've seen some people who believe that he believes what he's saying. In other words, Trump. He actually believes that. You know, whether he's delusional or whether he has a Napoleonic complex or whatever it is, he actually believes it. And therefore, it's not a lie. He actually believes it.
And you have to go back to the audience that's listening to him. Remember, Donald Trump was in the media for decades, and certainly on TV for over a decade, like as a news person. So people at home know this man. They feel like they have a connection to him in some ways, and so they may trust him more than the politicians that David referenced in terms of the polling, and that's scary. But we talked on this program before about how Trump has kind of thrown out the playbook, right, and has changed the rules in some ways of politics. And what's amazing is that he hasn't really apologized for these lies that he's been called out.
But Kathy, why would he apologize? It's working.
Exactly.
We had every headline from every broadcaster, every internet source saying that the Trump campaign people were in constant contact with the Russians, constant contact. Russians leaked from intelligence sources, reputable intelligence sources. Then he goes on for, I don't know how long it was, Peter, an hour and a half, whatever, on this crazy news conference. And guess what? We're not talking about Russians anymore. We're talking about the crazy conference.
Well, I think that one of the things you learn from that is that if critics of his want to be effective, I think they're going to have to pick their spots.
100%.
And I think that so far, the scattershot number of weird things and lies that are coming out of the White House and people running after every one of them just creates this general sense, well, they're against him and they're saying he's a liar and all politicians lie. But I think people are going to have to zero in on the things that really matter and drive those things home. And whether or not he believes them, whether he's delusional or lying, they're not true. And it is the media's job to say they're not true.
Okay, I got less than a minute left. Is there a time in politics where lying is okay, that you actually need to lie?
Only for the national security of the country.
Correct.
National security, that's it.
Correct. And you're absolutely entitled to lie for national security with one proviso, that as soon as the danger is past, then you come clean with the country and explain why you made the choices that you did. But at the end of the day, we do elect people to keep us safe, and there are times when you can't tell everybody everything you know.
Have they ever done that? Not lie, but come clean afterward?
That's a good question.
The closest may be the Iraq War, and they never came clean until they were called out, right? And they were proven wrong. Anyway, it's a fascinating discussion. I'm sure that many people are having it at home tonight as well, trying to understand how that L word plays into the current situation. And as we said, not just in the U.S., but elsewhere. Good to have the three of you back.
Great to be here.
The Insiders will be back in a few weeks. The National will be back in a few moments with this.
I don't want America, I want Canada.
Somali asylum seekers stuck in Mexico. They tell us why Canada is the new promised land. Plus, should wealthy donors be allowed to name a hospital? One province is wary. Columnist Robin Urbach wonders why. Time to look at the day's business numbers. Canadian and U.S. markets hit record highs. The TSX increased 83 points. The dollar fell almost a quarter of a cent. In New York, the Dow gained 118 points. The price of oil went up 55 cents a barrel. Well, as promised, Facebook Live, here we are, in between breaks. So to be straight up with you right away, the Insiders we taped about an hour ago, we like to get the panelists back into, like Kathleen lives in Ottawa, I'd like to get her back to Ottawa before the night ends so we don't pay for hotel rooms. Saving money all the time. Let me go over a couple of the questions that have come in. We're on a break. The crew is working in the studio getting things organized for the next block. We call these blocks. That was block 2. Block 3 is coming up. A couple of quick questions. Kelly McNeil asks, who was your most difficult interview? I can tell you that in a hurry. Margaret Thatcher, the former British Prime Minister. I interviewed her 3 times. First 2 were fine. The third one, there was a disaster. We didn't get along at all. Andrew Matheson asks, who was your inspiration as a journalist? Been lots of them. Knowlton Nash obviously was a mentor of mine. I guess in some ways it was Walter Cronkite. I remember sitting at home in high school watching his coverage of the Kennedy assassination in November of 1963, and when I made it onto his show as a young reporter in the mid-70s, I was with the CBC, but CBS asked me to do a piece for them, and I did, and having Walter Cronkite say my name was a big deal. Pierre-Andrew Sandon asked, what will you do next, Peter? I'll do block 3 next, Pierre-Andrew. Actually, I haven't really decided yet, but I'll probably still, in some fashion, be in the business, okay? Andrea Dolly asks, are you considering writing a book about your years of experience? Andrea, I wrote a book. It's at the bookstore. It was about 3 or 4 years ago, but you can still find it. And I may end up writing another one. Kelly McNeil asks, what's your favorite moment in your professional career? There's so many. I've been in this business for almost 50 years. And so there have been many, many, many favorite moments. And most of them are the opportunity I get to work with great people, with the journalists you see on our program, but also with the kind of people you see in this studio at night, both here on the studio floor and up in the control room. They're all great people, great professionals, and work extremely hard at making sure you get a good product on the news. We have a little more than a minute and a half left before we got to get ready for Block 3. Let's see, we got a couple more. Chris Olson asks, how do you think outlets, news outlets, and names a few, Breitbart, InfoWars, Fox, should be dealt with when they push stories that are blatant lies? Same way you would treat any news organization who you are convinced has told you a lie, blatantly pushed a lie. You should stop watching them, whether that news organization is one of the ones listed or any other one. If you feel that that's the way they are manipulating their broadcasts, then you shouldn't watch them. Mark asks, hey Peter, what hobbies do you enjoy doing? I imagine you're a guy who loves birding for some reason. Golf, hockey, sometimes hockey, a lot of times hockey. John D. Hamilton asks, who will replace you? You want me to tell you? Promise you won't tell anybody else? I can't tell you. I don't know. That decision is yet to be made, or it's yet to be announced. But that'll be coming soon, I'm sure. Andrew Matheson back in with another question. Have you ever thought of a political career? No, I have not thought of it. I love journalism. Listen, thanks for joining us. Facebook Live, we'll do it again. So stay with us. We're coming back with Block 3 in 3 seconds. Well, in recent weeks, you've seen it again and again. Somali asylum seekers crossing Canada's southern border, determined to find refuge the U.S. no longer offers. Mexico has been a crucial juncture on their long road to this apparent promised land. That's where the CBC's Evan Dyer met a number of Somalis. They told him firsthand why Canada now outshines the U.S.
It's early morning in this working-class neighborhood of Mexico City. This group of Somalis say they've come here to escape the jihadi group Al-Shabaab. Now they find themselves facing new dangers in a strange land.
Check only last night how many people died in Mexico City, man.
But to Abdikadir Ahmed Omar, it's still safer than the home he left in South Somalia, the violent heartland of Al-Shabaab, an affiliate of Al-Qaeda that's killed thousands. Abdikadir says he narrowly escaped a violent attack on his home. A local police chief told him he couldn't protect him or even his own men from Shabaab. He's traveled thousands of miles since and has thousands more to go to reach his goal.
My first and the second and the third destination was Canada. Hence, most of the immigrants that I was going with and from different nationalities, they were going to US, yeah? But for me, USA is not an option. They are against immigrant, refugees, and especially someone like me who is a Muslim, at the same time black, at the same time a Somali.
Abdikadir says there's no going back. Shabaab branded him an infidel for his work as an interpreter for foreign organizations. He told us he even worked one day for the CBC, a claim we checked and confirmed to be true. Like most of the migrants, Abdikadir has been robbed at gunpoint as he traveled across South and Central America.
If anyone wants to hurt you, because you're just a foreigner, and it's very easy.
To many Mexicans, they're a curiosity. Somalis learning to eat tamales. Most of these men left families behind. Unwilling to subject them to the rigors of this journey, they hope to bring them to Canada later. Their American journey started mostly in Brazil. Since then, they've crossed jungles, rivers, and at least 9 borders to reach Mexico City. It was during that journey they learned about President Trump's order banning all Somalis from the United States.
I don't want America, I want Canada. And there's no way I can go through America to Canada illegally, because this is the only way.
So they spend their days waiting, but a clock is ticking. Mexico's given them a visa good for only 45 days. Their money is all but gone. But still, they dream of reaching a country where, as they've all heard, a man who was once a Somali refugee like them has become Minister of Immigration. They also know all about Justin Trudeau.
I frequently follow him on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. One of the things that I was like when he was teaching Donald Trump that there is a good side of the refugees and he doesn't compromise the security of Canada. At the same time, they have a policies and system in place to help the refugees.
Every night I do dream about my future. I always think about my mom and my parents. And how life was difficult for them. So, I don't know how it will be. Because I know my mom and my father and my sisters are still there. And life is very difficult there. So, I don't know.
Canadian authorities are aware of what's happening here. They know that the people we've met here and the people crossing Canada's borders on foot in winter are all part of the same new migration, following the same well-worn path. In fact, Canadian officials recently traveled here, where they were briefed by Rodolfo Casillas of Flaxo University, one of Mexico's leading experts on migration. Mexico has long discouraged refugee claims, says Casillas, and yet these men may have no choice but to stay here if they can't cross the border.
Just as Canada is becoming the second destination of North America, Mexico is becoming the unwanted destination. Alongside the American dream, we now also see the Canadian dream, and let's just hope it doesn't turn into the Mexican nightmare.
For now, private charities like this Quaker-run hostel are picking up some of the slack. And it's here we meet Emmanuel.
Came from Ghana to Ecuador. Yeah.
Okay.
And then from Ecuador with a bus to Colombia.
Yep.
And then from Colombia through the jungle for
How
5
did you do
days.
that?
Walking, yeah.
Emmanuel says he's scared to show his face for fear of deportation. Like many of the migrants here, Emmanuel has read news stories about refugees nearly freezing to death on the Manitoba border.
The one that's going to lose their fingers, yeah. They walk through the snow, yeah.
So you're familiar with that story?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
But it doesn't deter you, it doesn't scare you?
No, it doesn't. So far as I'm not going to lose my life, no.
These migrants see the U.S. not as a destination country, but as a transit country like Mexico, and like Mexico, a country full of dangers. They're driven by a message they've heard that Canada is different.
I either die or survive. Those are the two options I have. And I'm ready to do that for the sake of my parents and my wife. Yeah.
You know you could freeze to death, right?
Absolutely. I know. But what my parents do for me when I was young is greater than what I'm doing for them now. Yeah.
What's holding these migrants back now is fear of what will happen to them in the United States, that they'll be detained and then deported back to the countries they fled. And so for now, they bide their time in a Mexican limbo, unwilling to go back, unable to move forward, and not allowed to remain here. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Mexico City.
Tomorrow, Evan will take us to Mexico's southern border with Guatemala, where the situation is even more dire. Right now, stay tuned for this week's Viewpoints.
I think a lot of the fellas make the mistake of looking for a girl that's absolutely perfect. Of course, I mean, you like to try and make her as almost perfect as you can, but I think you should learn to get along with the bad qualities and the good qualities.
What's your opinion on this business of going steady?
I think it's something that it just shouldn't be.
You mean it hasn't happened to you yet?
Not exactly.
It will someday. Don't look so smug.
I started dating when I was about 12 or 13. Well,
absurd the prestige of having a boyfriend. I don't know, I think you get too tied down. It's almost like getting married.
How do you make up your mind how far you're going to go on a date? Or it depends on the girl.
Well, I've recently met a fellow who believes that without exception, men, women, whether they're separated, divorced, or three-time losers, still cling to the hope that somehow, somewhere, there's someone just for them. He's Morton Victor, who tried to speed the process of natural selection by organizing a singles festival.
Being single could be very frustrating. It could be very depressing at times.
Just came to meet some nice young girl.
Well, maybe in the sense to meet somebody.
Well, to meet some girls.
You have to go looking for men?
No, I don't, but I mean, there's something new or something like that. I don't know.
Single and lonely and looking for love. A growing number of Canadians find themselves in precisely that situation these days.
The big problem today is the eternal one of finding someone who thinks you're as kind, sweet, sexy, sophisticated, witty, and intelligent as you know yourself to be. Where, oh where, to find such an extraordinary animal?
When your opening line is in a newspaper, you can say whatever you want. It's something single people in Toronto are doing more than ever.
You have total and complete anonymity.
Do you believe that you can find the woman of your dreams?
If you have the persistence to not be disappointed, by all rights, the heart should take over when you do meet the right person anyhow.
Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Hey!
Ryan Gosling is on top of the world. Well, at least the entertainment world. He's a mouseketeer.
Hey, Ma, I'm home. It's really neat because he kind of laid low and he did, he said, we picked out of a lot of talented kids and everything, Ryan, and, I wanted you to know that you're a mouseketeer. And I went, no way. And my mom she hit the roof.
My biggest feeling was just that I was so happy for Ryan. I was happy that he got a yes answer.
Ryan had already caught a lot of eyes with his feet. He'd won an Ottawa talent show, Homegrown Cafe, and several dance competitions in the United States as well. But it was his clean-cut looks and his singing which won him an audition with Disney officials last month in Florida.
She that travel around this alright to put you down. So people, let me put you
Now, after signing a one-year contract, he'll do singing and dancing on the Mickey Mouse Club.
To me, it's luck because there was kids there that were just phenomenal, so luck.
My name is Robin Urbach. I'm CBC.ca's opinion editor and columnist. I want to talk to you about governments getting in the way of philanthropy. Only in Ontario would someone come forward with an offer of $10, $25, $50 million, only to have the government turn around and say, nah. Cash-strapped Ontario, the land of ballooning hydro bills, under-resourced schools, and warehouses of unsold Pan Am patchy dolls, is thinking about adopting a new disincentive when it comes to major donations to Ontario hospitals. According to a recent report in the Toronto Star, Health Minister Eric Hoskins is considering banning hospitals from being named after wealthy donors. The reason? Ontario wants to ensure the names used by hospitals reflect their role as publicly supported organizations. Is this about you feeling insecure, Ontario? Now, if you're a wealthy donor, you could still get your name on a research center or a building, just not on the whole hospital. This proposal comes after Toronto East General Hospital was named Michael Garron Hospital in 2015 after the Garron family donated $50 million in honor of their son who died in 1975 at the age of 13. Now, healthcare systems nationwide aren't exactly flush with cash. Quality of care still varies widely from province to province and city to city, with frontline workers in various jurisdictions reporting being overburdened and understaffed. People are still waiting months for scans and surgeries. It's only going to get worse given the increased pressure of an aging population. Hospitals across the country will be facing the same issues. So instead of putting up roadblocks to donations from wealthy corporations or individuals, why not actually encourage them to donate to hospitals? So what if their name is on the door? For all I care, bring me to Wendy's Spicy Chicken Hospital the next time I have an acute medical emergency, if it will get me to a doctor faster. For The National, I'm Robin Erbach.
I'm Anna Maria Tremonti. Tomorrow on The Current, the treadmill was originally a device used to punish prison inmates 200 years ago. So how far have we moved from the idea of exercise as punishment? We're asking on The Current, weekdays at 8:30 on CBC Radio 1.
The oldest camera in the world. And this, the oldest existing photograph, taken in 1826. Then in 1851, a new process came along. A glass plate had to be meticulously cleaned. It was then coated with collodion to form a thin, even film on the glass. It was a cumbersome method, but the glass gave clear, sharp negatives and unlimited prints on paper.
With me now is the promotion manager for Black Camera chain.
This is the Kodak Instamatic. You just simply flip the back like so, open it up, and I'll let you take it from there.
I will now play the part of the child. If I can operate as a child can, and that will show you how easy it all is to do.
I knew if I said that it would come out backwards, and it did. Now that's the roll of film. Just
read it, turn it around, and Zappo.
Want to take an indoor picture?
Yes,
you
I
pop
do.
on a cube.
Yes, a cube. Now, and then I just push that,
the
and I got a
button.
picture.
That's it.
All right, stand back, everybody.
Nope.
Well, hey, folks, it works.
One of the keys to taking good pictures is the size of your film. The larger the negative, the better chance you'll get sharp results. That's the knock against the disc cameras. They're easy to use and inexpensive, but if you plan to get any of your pictures enlarged, the tiny negatives in disc film are a real liability.
This new film method comes complete with its own lens and shutter. It slips easily into a pocket, and it can be developed in the usual way. Until now, camera companies were in a race to produce the most portable and the cheapest of the instant filmless cameras, and the announcement by the Japanese Fuji Group is a major leap forward.
This is one you hook to your computer.
Looks like a telephone.
It's a camera that'll hold 32 images in electronic memory. Then you can transfer them to your computer.
Can you take my picture with us?
Be glad to. All right, ready?
Smile for the computer?
Smile for the computer. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
And once they're in the computer, can you print them on your printer?
You can print them on your printer. You can put them, say, into a publishing program if you want to include them in a newsletter.
Ooh, this is exciting. I look pretty darn stupid there. How much is this job you worth?
This one's $800.
Okay.
Modern photographers can work with precision because of the technical advances of the late 19th century. But the mystery and magic of photography remains in the way silver crystals gather together after being exposed to light.
A new study published in the medical journal The Lancet uses multiple models to project countries' life expectancy to the year 2030. And by that measure, the future looks old. South Korea stands out as a marvel. By 2030, there's a good chance men will have a life expectancy of 84 years, women over 90 years. That's a life expectancy many researchers once thought impossible. Canada also performs well. Male life expectancy will likely rise to nearly 84 years, women to just over 87 years. A poorer performer among high-income countries, the United States. By 2030, it will have probable life expectancies of 81 years for men, 83 years for women. That's The National this Tuesday night. For news at any hour, you can always go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm Peter Mansbridge. Thanks for watching.